Let's go. You switch between there. All right, so you picked up the energy there. Tonight, very informal chat. You've been to Startup Grind, you know how we do it. You've done Startup Grind before too?
I've watched Startup Grind.
All right.
I've done it before.
All right, cool.
This is my first chapter of it. So
All
I
right.
didn't know the woo piece. They didn't do that for my talk at
No?
Startup Global. Yeah, they should though.
If I introed you, I would have.
Okay.
I got everyone up. So let's go back. I always kind of like to start with childhood, or was there a mother or father that was an entrepreneur? I'm always curious to, and if not, was there this defining moment where you did the lemonade stand, or like, you know, we had people sell baseball cards or whatever it was that kind of got you on the entrepreneurial track?
Do you want to go first? See the mic?
Sure. I don't have a parent that was an entrepreneur. My parents had pretty conventional jobs as a lawyer and an architect. But I guess I was kind of a weird kid. Like I really was really interested in weird kid. I was really interested actually in social entrepreneurship. So I did some fundraising when I was in high school and did a lot of like advocacy work and helped fund an organization that was involved in improving public education in the US. But I kind of marched to the beat of my own drummer, I guess you could say. But I don't think that there was any direct entrepreneurial link in my family.
So for me, both my parents were teachers in the public education system in California. And I didn't find out till much later that my dad owned a store in the US. So when he first came over, so my parents are originally from China and then en route to Taiwan to the US and had me and my sister. Long way here. But I learned that my dad, when he first came, he opened up a store called the Fun Store. And it actually had...
Fun stuff?
I guess so. I wasn't born at that time. I was like, oh man, I really wish it was around. But it was like the dollar store before like the dollar was, you know, around. But I guess it would have been a nickel and dime store at that point. And then he also owned real estate. So for a while, he's done some real estate. And I think that that's probably where a lot of kind of entrepreneurial pieces might have come into play that I didn't quite know that we had because I always thought he was a teacher until later in life.
So when did he spring that on you?
So I think he sprung it on me in high school. He told me, this might be embarrassing, it's kind of recorded, but he's like, yeah, I was like, Dad, how'd you get into teaching? And he's like, well, you know, I saw Mother, you know, having weekends off and 3 months off, and the Fun Store wasn't doing so well. I'm like, Fun Store, what was that about? And so he told me about it. He told me like they sold just kind of knick-knack stuff and stationery and things like that. So it's like high school or so.
Cool. So fast forward to your education. What were you studying, and was computer science? How did you get into the entrepreneurial space?
So my education was quite varied. I ended up doing an undergraduate in communications and East Asian studies, and then later did some grad work in information management and systems. And that's really where I got into more technology, more so than entrepreneurship. But I think moving into Silicon Valley, oftentimes you have technology and it just can go hand in hand quite easily with entrepreneurship. I actually don't know your background. I'm just curious.
So I studied political science in school, and I minored in entrepreneurship. And then I actually was a public school teacher for 2 years and really hated working in the public sector. Found it to be very frustrating and wanted to try something totally new. So moved to Silicon Valley actually to work for an ed tech VC fund. And that's really kind of how I caught the tech bug. It was the beginning of the tech boom, and was also kicking around an idea for a startup, and took the plunge.
How did you get into VC? I mean, that's an interesting, like...
Yeah, so I when I was teaching, one of the things I really enjoyed about teaching was figuring out how to incorporate technology into my classroom, and then also helping other teachers in the school figure out how to use technology with their students. There's a really big opportunity gap when it comes to kids in a lot of low-income schools in the United States don't have the same access to technology that their more affluent counterparts have access to. And so there's like going to be a really big gap in just the access that they have to opportunity. And so to me, that was a concrete way to be able to solve that problem. And I was so frustrated by everything else that was going on that was kind of a way that I felt like I could have an impact. And
was your introduction into VC and seeing deals come through start you on your own entrepreneurial journey?
In a way, I think I was very intrigued by the process. I mean, the fund I worked for was so specific when it came to the types of companies they were investing in. They were all education companies, and I think, it definitely gave me a different understanding of how investors think about funding companies. But I think, if anything, it made me want to be in the company building part of it more than the funding part of it.
And go ahead.
I had a question.
Please, go ahead.
Like the minor in entrepreneurship, did you use any,
yeah, I did.
You used the stuff?
Yeah, I used the stuff.
Okay.
Because
some people say that entrepreneurship can't be taught. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So I go back and forth with whether or not it can be taught. I think what it was really great for was exposure to people who were thinking about things a little bit differently. How do you take theory that you're learning in a university setting and then figure out how that's going to help you solve a problem in the private sector or in the public sector? It's just kind of that entrepreneurial way of thinking about solving a problem, which I think was unique, as opposed to I learned hard entrepreneurial skills, which I don't think I learned. I think you learn that by doing it.
I see.
So Holly, can you go through your first venture? And
sure.
Ideally, I'm guessing there might have been a failure in there, unless you're just one of these.
Oh no, it's
yeah.
So
I'm interested in failure. Just because there's a lot of learning in it.
Well, I think there's definitely some early starts and fits and a lot of failure in the last 10 years of our company. I'd say we started 3 companies in the last 10 years because we actually didn't do gaming. I actually don't know if you guys know what Kabam does, but we make games on the mobile phone.
Got a lot of game fans here.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, how many of you guys heard of it? Oh, okay. I was like, how many of you guys heard of Kabam? Because usually people hear more about our games itself, which is we do Marvel Contest of Champions, which is a fighting game. But we didn't really start doing games until 2009. We started doing a corporate social network. So it sounds super sexy, huh? But we started in 2006 in a world where there wasn't any seed acceleration. Accelerators weren't around. There wasn't really such thing as seed. There was a couple of angels. And angel investing was really new. I think that's probably most of what Australia has right now. Is angel. Is that when the investment climate's
We've got a few. We've got a few
angels,
big.
a couple
No,
of
we've got some. Yeah, we've got some VCs
too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was a lot of angel. By all stretch of the means, there's 4 of us co-founders, and we were pretty incompetent. To be honest, we never should have made it this far. I will say what was extremely valuable, your VC experience. Our CEO had VC experience as well, and I will say it's very relationship driven. We're actually having this conversation today, and I think part of having that relationship with investors is extremely important because they're gonna not just put their money into you, they're gonna invest in you as a person and your company as well. So it's very important for them to get to know you, and I think that helped us tremendously on getting our first round of funding. I don't think we would have gotten funding today, to be honest, because it was just off of an idea. I don't really fund ideas anymore, sorry. Because it's so easy now to build a product, and I think that the hardest thing is traction. I think product is really easy, but traction is a lot more difficult. So our first venture failed because nobody would come. It was pretty useless. We did a lot of...
That was the social network?
Yeah, it was almost like Facebook Insight, because we were like, oh, Facebook's doing really well. Let's do it for people who have money, the people who work for companies. Yeah, that's what they were like, oh, college students don't have any money, but they have a lot of time. And the corporate people don't have any, they have a lot of money, but not a lot of time. And they're not too passionate about work, actually. So we learned pretty quickly early on that just didn't work out very well. And then we ended up moving into TV shows and sports teams, and right around the same time. So our story has a lot of great inflection points where we were able to kind of catch that wave. And Facebook at the time had opened up their developer API. And we were able to kind of be able to find a product that makes, or create a product that made a lot more sense. We were like, oh, we should get something that people are excited about instead of work. We were all excited about TV shows and sports teams. And then
give me the scenario. What would a show be like?
So at the time, I don't know if you guys remember apps on Facebook, but we had like a quote app, which you could say, like if you liked Grey's Anatomy, you could put on this app that said, I love Grey's Anatomy, and you can have a quote from, I don't know, Meredith Grey or something. and then we had, we had some really fun things. So it was like a community inside. So I was talking to Shruti a little bit about how B2B and B2C are very different. We had a server melting moment. So if you're building a consumer type business and you have a server melting moment, that's a really good thing, because that means people are using your business and you're like, damn, people are like, they're using it so much. Now it's not so good. It's still a problem. It's just a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. And the thing that broke our servers when we knew we were onto something was our trivia game. So basically our communities were all user generated, even the trivia game. So people would submit trivia questions and then they would answer them. So it was wonderful. It's this like wonderful user created community. And that was really one of those things that we're like, oh, I think we're onto something. Not a lot of people know, but we first started out in TV shows and we then moved into sports teams. And for a while, our CEO was like, no, we're not going into sports. Partly because in America, we spend a lot of time talking about focus and how you can lose a lot of focus, like you lose a lot of success by not focusing is really kind of the mantra that we all run by and kind of run towards. I know might be a little different from country to country, but in the US, it's all about focus. And he was very much against going in there. And on our team was a product manager who loved college football. And I think Facebook spread here with the college campuses as well. Did start with college in Australia.
I think we had
how you guys adopted
Bebo first was the big one, and MySpace.
Bebo, I remember that. MySpace. Okay, so
I know Bebo had pretty big market penetration. I was talking to one of those investors.
Yeah.
It's like Australia and New Zealand was big.
Were they big? Oh, okay. So Facebook, how they grew in the US was very much through college campuses. They would basically take harvard.edu, and you knew that everybody was there. So it was a trusted community because everybody came from Harvard and you could verify that. So we knew that American football, not soccer. College football was big and college season was coming around. And we had a product manager who was really into it. And he finally convinced our CEO that it would be a smart thing to do. And I sat down with the CEO and I was like, why did you decide now? And he's like, well, basically it was a 20%, you just have to 20% tweak, because we would clone our TV shows and put it into sports teams. So if you loved like, a particular football team, like the Manchester United, you could say, I love Manchester United, you could put the schedule up there. It was basically a 20% change and 80% the same. And particularly for college kids, they just go crazy in the US for football. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And he goes, Holly, it's just like bars of gold waiting around to be picked up. Which better team is set up to do this? And I knew the answer was us. And so I think that was one thing that just kind of marked a lot of like,
so did it work?
Core competency. Yeah, it worked. In fact, as it was, the sports teams, the sports communities were one of the things that lasted. We actually killed our TV shows. Actually, they were slowly dying, and we said, okay, let's sunset this. And it was really the
sunset.
Sunset.
That's a nice way. No,
it's a right off into the sunset. Yeah.
Never heard failure like that's great. I'm gonna
this is like sunsetting. Yeah. So there were many reasons why the TV shows were just were not working there. Partly because it was on Facebook. So Facebook changed a lot of things, as well as we were coming on in a big recession as well, and it was very ad supported. And so we kept our sports teams. In fact, we morphed them into a lot of the betting games that were much more amenable to the fantasy football games. And that actually pushed us even more into games. Because by that point, we were playing around with virtual currency, a little bit of microtransactions, but really that was the kind of our bridge into gaming. And around that time, particularly, we had a recession in the U.S. Brought on by our mortgage crisis, and it was just we're looking around. We were ad-supported business, and it just wasn't working out. So we found that there were Facebook games that were just killing it. And again, one of the things that we looked at was like our core competencies. We knew how to do. We had about over 100 years of Facebook experience building apps. So we were probably the team to do it if we were. We just didn't have gaming experience. So, but at the time, many people who were doing Facebook games didn't have any gaming experience either. And I think that in some ways really changed. It's getting really geeky, but the gaming industry in many ways. We all have kind of a web service background, so we started thinking about games as a service, even for folks like Zynga, anybody on Facebook, because it was what they call the freemium model, which is free to play, and then if you like something, you can pay money for it. So we had to work and earn every single dollar. We had to build relationships with the players. In fact, our marketing was not that great in terms of marketing posters. We spent a lot of time optimizing around how do we buy ads? How do we get other people to play this in a way that made a lot of sense for the consumer? So we had a lot of failure. I could spend a lot more time talking about all the individual players.
Before we go through the Kabam story, I wanted to just jump to Shruti and us.
Talk about your failures?
No.
Oh, sorry. I'm alone with this.
Well, everyone's got a failure. Go on. Everyone does. Otherwise, you've been in the game long enough. I wanted to just, you're YC, alumni. Can you explain about, that process? I'm always interested. We had the founder of Secret. I know that it's just such a tremendous value, that network. Can you just talk about, joining YCOM, what you were working on, and go through that kind of story?
Well, I'll be totally honest and tell you that I don't think I knew what Y Combinator was until maybe 4 weeks before we applied.
I didn't tell you about that in your entrepreneurship class?
They did not.
I was like,
they did not tell us about that, which is pretty crazy. But I ran a company called Move Loot for 3.5 years. It was an online marketplace for buying and selling used furniture. And the way we got our business started was we had an Indiegogo campaign. We raised $15,000 and we found a warehouse space in San Francisco. And we needed traction. So we started emailing people on third-party listing websites, and also emailing friends and family to get furniture that we could photograph, list on our site, and then deliver to a buyer once it's sold. Well, we did this, and we only had $15,000, and rent was $2,000, and the truck was $500 a week, and so you start to add up that math, and that money's going to go really fast. We also weren't paying for marketing at the time. And so somebody said to us, well, you guys should really apply to YC. That might be a great way for you to get a little bit of seed capital, and then also maybe gain some credibility.
So explain to what YC is.
So Y Combinator is a tech accelerator. It's one of
the best one.
It's the best.
It's the best.
It is the best.
Yeah, it's birthed Airbnb, Dropbox, Stride,
A bunch of other companies.
Zenefits.
And basically the way YC works is if you get in, you spend 12 weeks with a group of founders listening to talks every Tuesday night about what it's like to run a company, and also working on building your business. So you get very serious about growth and the metrics you need to hit to prove that on demo day your company is worth investing in. So we joined YC in the winter of 2014. We were in the last batch before Sam Altman took over. At the time it was run by somebody named Paul Graham, who was one of the founders of YC. And we were, fortunately, I guess at the time, able to grow about 10% week over week through a lot of coaching from YC partners. And we closed a $2.8 million seed round at the end of YC.
And how does the network, I know that it's very much like a give back kind of culture. Is that just like you can get on the phone with Nate from Airbnb and have a chat? How does that work?
It's not quite like that, but it's very much, I think YC founders are very supportive of each other. So oftentimes we're sharing everything from resumes to ideas about how to engage employees to I have this problem and I need 4 people to help me solve it. So there's a lot of sharing that way, both digitally, like online, and then just being able to reach out to people who might have subject matter expertise. There's also partnerships. A lot of YC companies like to partner with each other on certain projects, or sometimes they'll co-launch a product or do something like that. But yeah, I mean, it really is an incredible community, and I think there's very much a pay it forward mentality, which is not just for YC internally. Like, one of the most amazing things I remember about YC was that there was a company, or there was a group of founders that had gotten to YC before we did, like a batch or two before us. And we emailed them out of the blue saying, we got an interview for YC, we need help prepping, and they were more than willing to have us come to their office and do practice questions with us, which was pretty incredible when you think that, like, they never met us, they had no context for what we were doing, and they were willing to help.
It's really just a Silicon Valley thing too, isn't it? Do you find it's like there's a lot of giving, like, helpful?
I think
like,
so. I think there's definitely a big pay it forward, a karma type thing where people do pay it forward. I think partially it's kind of small in Silicon Valley. You're only 1 or 2 hops away, so I do think you do want to take care of your reputation. Sometimes word gets around, even around bad investors. We just talked about some of them. And I think the world is a bit smaller, particularly in Silicon Valley, a lot smaller than you expect. But the mentality is to pay it forward.
Well, like in Australia, for example, I think it's slowly changing, but it's like, what are you working on? I can't tell you. It's like, it's top secret until I launch it.
Like fear that somebody's going to take your idea.
And then where it's very much the opposite, like trying to always continually, that's how I found it, like just getting feedback from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we would even we would talk to competitors all the time. There was a competitive company in our YC batch that's still around. They invested in both of us at the same time. Sorry. And we still, would hang out with the founders and share ideas. And I think, I mean, there's obviously like some tension there, but I think the general idea is that most people who are doing startups, their ideas are going to evolve and change anyway. So like,
Yeah.
you probably are going to gain more from learning from each other than not.
I also think there's a premium on execution over the idea. So people are like, oh, if I share this idea, that's one thing to have a great idea. It's another thing to be able to execute. So it's like, oh yeah, that's a really great bike, but can you ride it? Kind of thing. And I love the phrase, I don't know if you've heard of this phrase, but we call it co-opetition a lot. It's like you're frenemies in some ways, but you're still like pretty friendly. But I think there's just such a premium on execution that's why people are much freer to refine the idea, because in the idea, it's like the easiest thing to change. But it gets a lot harder once you start executing and once that informs a lot of things. So it's much better to try to learn from somebody else's mistakes than your own. It's always a lot easier if you can.
Yep.
I want to go through first, Shruti. Sorry, can I ask you quickly?
Yeah.
This was actually a really big business. I think you went on to raise 22 million
Yep,
bucks.
we raised 22 million in total.
So I want to get onto the topic of growth and then come back to you, because I know it's a big growth story. Just explain like what worked with you in terms of growth, what didn't work, and I'm always interested in the topic of scaling culture.
Yeah. Well, what worked for us? So I guess I can backtrack and say, so my startup, we sadly shut it down this summer after we had some really great growth, and then because of the funding environment, really needed to change, I guess, our focus from growth to profitability. And we almost got there, and then took a really big risk and changed our business model, and it didn't work the way that we had hoped. But in terms of growth, we experienced a whole lot of it. In a year and a half, we went from 20 employees to 220 nationwide. And that was really, really hard because our team was not all in the same place. And also, we had many different types of employees. So we were a tech company. We were building logistics and routing software. We were on this online marketplace, but we also had trucks and warehouses and people doing physical delivery of stuff, which is very difficult to do, especially when it's big and bulky like furniture. So, I think to answer your question, particularly about culture, I think it was, I think we did some stuff really well. Like we tried to instill kind of a monthly cadence of all team hands meetings. So it's all hands meeting, sorry. An all hands meeting is when the whole team comes together and you kind of share what is going to be happening over some period of time. Maybe it's the next month or the next few months. Like, what are the strategic initiatives that the company is going to be working on? And then it's an opportunity for people to ask questions.
It's everybody in the company.
Everybody
right?
in the company.
Yeah.
So, we would block a morning off so that, our drivers weren't out doing pickups and deliveries, and everyone got to sit with their team and engage with kind of the future of the company. But another thing that was really important to us was that everybody had ownership in the company. So it didn't matter whether you were a driver or whether you were an engineer, you had equity in the business. And that just ethically was something that was really important to us, and we wanted our whole team invested in where we were headed. We tried to do a lot of different things to build culture in individual offices. So, making sure that the people who were running those offices hosted happy hours and engaged with the team outside of work to try to build more of a cohesive culture, because the whole team across the country was doing that. But I still think we had a long way to go in terms of where we wanted our culture to be. And part of the challenge, I think, with culture too, is when you're growing that fast, people's roles are changing really, really quickly. And when your role is changing really quickly, and my role is changing really quickly, and that was difficult for me to manage. So I can't imagine what it's like for somebody else who kind of jumps into a situation where their job is one thing, and 2 months later, their job is totally something different, and it's not maybe what they expected in the first place. And so I think that was something that our team, we spent a lot of time talking about, because I think people felt a little bit like, what's going on here? This is crazy.
I imagine it was pretty much the same for you as well, right? Because
Yeah.
it sounds like if you were we had this idea, we're going to take photos of furniture and all that, and the next thing you're like, how do I scale the logistics? How do I scale warehousing? How do I so...
Yeah, it was crazy.
All right. So there you go. We're streaming it as well. Holly, so... Holly, please talk about... So you have a really crazy story. Is it something
crazy. So So we have a similar growth story as well. I left for maternity leave at the end of 2010. We were about 80 people. I knew everybody. And then 2011, when I came back in February, early February, we were at 150. And then by the end of 2011, we're at 450. I don't know. Would you have dumped that many people in again? Yeah, I don't think we would either. All of our founders are kind of more people, more problems. Yeah. It's kind of rough. I think we both hit that same time of if you have all this capital, so you need to hire, you need to grow, and kind of this continual push. And there is this constant tension between growth and profitability. I know Silicon Valley anchors a little bit more on growth, but don't worry, we worry about profitability as well. For us, our growth was a bit crazy on the people side, and even our revenues were a little crazy as well. So we went from 0 to 360 million in revenue over 4 years. So it's just nutty. Yeah. So I could spend a whole time talking about games and why they're so unique and why people. It's definitely it's a little bit like the restaurant business. It's really great to get to cash flow positive if you can get a hit, and that's a big if, because even restaurants have a 90% failure rate, but it's very hard to scale in terms of games. But they look very appealing in many ways on a cash basis. Multiples are not as good, so it's a little bit more difficult. But I digress a little bit in terms of scaling the company. I think it's usually when people get dumped in, it's kind of how do you scale the culture? So we'd even have, we were probably quite nascent on what is culture and what is values. So I believe it's okay to evolve your values over time, particularly as a company grows and changes. And we've actually done that. We've had 3 sets of values. Everybody starts rolling their eyes what, we're going to talk about culture again. But it's really, I do believe it's the only way that you can scale, because really, culture is people, it's the assurance that people are going to act the way all in the same way? Are they going to make decisions in a similar way that you would want them to make decisions, right? You're looking at it through the same lens. It's just like the YC culture is to pay it forward. So it's not like Paul Graham sitting there like, you better take this call, you know, you better like practice their interview with them, right? So I do believe culture is that incredible thing that helps people make decisions on how to do business when the founders aren't around, where the CEO is not around. And that's really the way you can scale. But it's something that you kind of really have to keep an eye on continuously. And what's more importantly around culture.
What were those things you were looking for? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we had the founder of Prezi maybe half a year ago. He had this, he called, I think it was the Bucharest to San Francisco test, where it was like, if I don't think I can sit next to this person on the plane for 14 hours, he doesn't get the job. Or she doesn't get the
well,
job.
that tests likability. I think you have to be very careful around testing likability.
Well, it was one of the things. But
Yeah, no, people really like that test, but I think like early on, we ended up hiring a lot of people similar to us, and we realized like, okay, not only are our internal networks tapped out, but we probably need to hire past that and get skills that are different than ours, and that also means sometimes working styles that are quite different than you. And for us, I mean, there's different ways. So there's a lot. So the first thing you got to know about culture is caught, not taught. So they're definitely going to be watching how the CEO behaves, how the founders behave. I always talk about how the culture of the company is as if the founders had a baby, and that's what it is. It's the company, and it's the personality of the company. I was like, oh my God, I see a little bit of Kevin in this. I see a little bit of Mike. I see a little bit of Wade. I don't know if that was like you guys at
definitely.
Blue. I was like, oh, okay, we are very passive aggressive. We gotta fix that. So I don't know if we had like a similar test like he had, but we certainly kind of looked at it at many, many different lenses. And I will say the CEO is the backstop on setting kind of the tone of the culture. You probably see that with Uber now. And one thing around our CEO is he was very, I know how to break down, like he probably wasn't he's phenomenal at strategy. The fuzzy wuzzies probably weren't there. And culture is this kind of really fuzzy thing. It's hard to get a hold of. So eventually I got to a point where I think like worked out for us, how we looked at culture was very strategic. I had to set it into a strategic viewpoint. So he would set out the kind of values of the business, or not the values, the goals of the business, and then I'd break them down, and I'd be like, okay, so do we have the current mindset to support these goals or not? What are behaviors we need to change? So an example of this would be we're trying very hard to switch our views from long-term to from short-term thinking to long-term thinking. So one of the things we did is we changed our bonus structure to not pay out quarterly. We moved to an annual-based structure, and that I think helped enforce a lot of the thinking. So there's definitely a lot of great literature out there that's written about culture, but some of the things you really have to watch for on how your culture is being played out, it's who you hire, who you fire, how decisions are made, how things are communicated is another thing. Those are probably the main four ones. I know I'm missing one. There's like 5 of them, but to constantly keep those in line with your values is never something I'm opposed to. I do think some of that. This is why you mentioned the internal communications, because that's the way people learn. Those are the rituals that get set into place. That help reinforce some of those pieces and some of those cultures. But it all starts with values. It all starts with writing them down, talking about it, talking about what does it look like, what are the implications of this, what are the applications of this. And it starts with the executive team and then the leadership team and then kind of rolling it out and then enforcing it with rewards and even rituals. We used to have a storytelling time during our all hands meetings because we used to do this thing called peer bonuses where you would, if you saw somebody behaving like similar to our Kabam values, which one of them was like, well, we've changed over time, but the latest one is like we go all in. So maybe somebody was super committed in answering some tickets or fixing something for a player. Somebody else could give them a peer bonus of like $200. But what we would do at the company meeting is we'd invite the giver to come up there and talk about why that person gave it and kind of spread it through stories as well as examples of this is what it looks like to behave in these values, because we constantly need that, especially when it's bigger. When you're smaller, it's a lot easier.
If I can backpedal a little bit and go back to the jump in revenue.
Oh,
Yeah. But this is the fun bit, right? I love culture too, but everyone's like, what's the big jump in the money? How did that happen?
It was over 4 years.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, there must have been one tipping point where you're like, hang on, or one game in particular.
Right.
There was, I don't know if you caught the founder of Zynga at the conference talk. Yeah.
I didn't catch it.
Yeah. But
What was his farm bill?
I love there was a quote about what if everything goes right?
What if everything?
What if everything goes right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm interested to see if like.
We did the opposite. We did like a pre-mortem. What are the things that are going to go wrong?
Yeah, everyone does that. But I like the idea, like, what happens if we come to work tomorrow and like 1 million downloads and like we need new servers? Like, I like just the concept of what happens if it goes right.
Yeah.
So tell me about this moment or this tipping point where you're like, or the game that was like, this is great. We're onto something, man.
Sure. So our first game that we launched was called Kingdoms of Camelot, and it was on Facebook. And I know it's so sexy sounding. But for those of you who like to play games and would call themselves a gamer, it's a strategy-based game. And for those who are not strategy-based folks, it's basically you build your resources to build your city, and then it's to raise an army so you can go fight. And I know it seems really basic, but this was like really earth-shattering at Facebook during this time, because at the time there was only Farmville where you could just click, and I don't know, when did Facebook come to Australia, or is it not popular at all here?
Yeah, it's pretty.
And now it is?
Everyone
Was
loves
Facebook games like popular?
Yeah, I used to
like
play the
Facebook?
poker.
The poker?
I used to virtual currency. I was thinking that. I was like, I used to pay $50 to get like 1 million fake chips.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They got you nothing.
It's like, I
wanted to look like I had been winning.
Oh, I hear you. So our game, you could definitely advance a lot farther. Our game was probably the first time, because our CEO is actually, he's a gamer. And he's like, I hate these games like these Zynga games. I love them. I tend to be more of a casual gamer. And he said, well, what if we built something that was more for people like me? He basically built the company for himself. Which is, people who enjoyed games and wanted something a bit deeper. And when we were kind of going, we knew we were at the end of our ropes in some ways for the games. Not for the games, for our TV shows and sports teams. The revenue just wasn't really cutting it. It was ad-based. We were in the middle of one of the largest recessions for some of in our lifetimes. So we decided, hey, why don't we go into the games? And I remember we didn't have a lot of money, so we had art interns come in and draw the art. They were part-time students. At the other part of the time, they were drawing for us. And then we did user testing at the time, which is kind of interesting on user testing. I was just applying web-based stuff onto there. And we invited our friends or family, gave them pizza and beer, and you think your friends and family are going to be nice and they're going to hold punches. They were so mean. I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I was like, I would rather stand in line at the DMV, our Department of Motor Vehicles, and watch them do this, because it was incredibly painful. My brother-in-law was like, these graphics are so ugly. And I'm like, yeah, see if you could do better. There's another way, like, another relative was like, I'm never going to play this. Another friend's like, this is lame. But we were like, I guess we can't do anything but launch it. So we launched it, and I think maybe there's something to like the worse it does in testing, maybe the better it does in real life. And so when we launched it, it was like, I think partly chat was not working. So chat was something that was very innovative for Facebook at the time, because you could chat between your friends, but you could not chat between strangers. And this one allowed you to chat between strangers around a common interest, which was the game. So chat just turned the lights on. And the brother-in-law that hated my art, he became like vice chancellor for one of the alliances. I know it sounds really geeky, but it's very honorable. He's a leader in his alliance. And so he ended up, I think that the biggest tipping point was when we launched it, not only were people started using it, but I remember we learned about monetization and microtransactions. So at one point, our largest package was like $50, and people bought it. We're like, whoa, what if we raise it to $100? And people bought it still, and we're like, who is spending this money here? And so we looked into our logs, and it was somebody from like Saudi Arabia spending money. So we're like, oh, oil tycoons. And so that's when we realized we were on to something. I even remember, I think probably, that was the second, I will back up a bit. I remember Thanksgiving, we're like, holy crap, like we made $3,000 in one day. We were just shocked because we were going from a CPM advertising base where we just see pennies at a time, and it's all based off of revenue contracts where they give to you, but we're like, oh my God, who's giving us this money? People are paying. And so we ended up doing packages like, I think we might have done like a $5,000 package at one point. Like people were really investing a lot of their time, and they really found a lot of value in our games. And we were, I mean, for me, I kind of feel like, I know people say like, oh, games are really silly, but I think, you know, it's really connecting people. I know that sounds really silly, but one time my husband, he started playing the game, our first game, and he's like, wow, there's a woman in our alliance who has, I kid you not, but was it sarcoma? It was something like Dr. House had, where she was like basically bedridden, and she basically told her alliance that this is the only outlet she has. We've definitely had marriages, we've had some divorces, but more marriages that have met and married through a game, friends for life. So there's a lot of things that these games actually bring about. I know that people think that they're just games, but in my mind, like that's how we've learned. Every human loves to play games. Every culture loves to play games. I believe that if you don't like video games, it's not true. It's just there hasn't been a video game made for you. So I think there's just something human in games at the heart of everything. But yeah, so that's where we hit our first inflection point about revenue. Is we knew, or we said, whoa, we've never seen this much money.
And did that take a lot of stress off the business to be able to, you know, work on what you want a little bit? And
No.
No.
More money, more problems. More people, more problems. More money, more problems.
I'll jump over to Shruti. So, now you're the entrepreneur in residence for Silicon Valley Bank.
Yep.
You're heading up. You said the Stripe Atlas program, or the affiliation from the bank.
Yeah. Yep.
So Startup Grind, we're one of the members.
Okay.
Give us a plug. Yeah, we are.
Awesome.
Yeah, we are. So can you explain the Stripe Atlas program,
Yeah.
and then talk about your role a little bit?
Of course. So I'm currently an EIR at SVB, but basically Stripe Atlas is a program that Stripe started, I guess now about a year ago, and it allows entrepreneurs globally to incorporate their businesses in the United States and open a US bank account. And SVB is the banking partner for Atlas. So if you were to use Atlas to incorporate your business in the US, we would be opening your bank account. And yeah, Atlas is, I mean, it's an amazing program. They've seen a lot of traction from entrepreneurs globally. And my role currently is to kind of manage the bank's part of that relationship.
So sorry to cut you off. So Patrick was talking about this at the conference too,
Yeah.
about this has really helped people in a country that might be remote, where they would not get the investment because they didn't have an American
Because
company.
they didn't have an American company, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's been a really amazing way for a global community of entrepreneurs to kind of get access to what a lot of American entrepreneurs, and actually there are many American entrepreneurs who also are taking advantage of Atlas as well, to incorporate their businesses.
Because it used to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a big pain in the butt if you want to incorporate and open a bank account. It's not exactly the most seamless process, so being able to do that as a one-stop shop is pretty awesome.
Cool. And then this led the success, and then entrepreneur in residence bit. How did that happen? And talk about Silicon Valley Bank. For
Of
people that
course.
know. I know it's a big deal.
Yeah, so Silicon Valley Bank is a bank that was started, I believe, in the 80s, basically during kind of the first tech boom, I guess you could say, to be able to fund, to be the bank for people that were starting companies, or starting startups. And so they today bank a lot of startups in Silicon Valley and a lot of companies globally, but they call themselves a relationship bank. So they're very intertwined also with the investor community in the Bay, and so they have a lot of connections, which can prove to be valuable to entrepreneurs. I actually ended up at the bank because I happened to meet the head of the early stage practice. Her name is Claire Lee. She's amazing. And we were talking about kind of what happened to my startup. And she said, well, I'm doing the Stripe Atlas thing, and you have a really interesting skill set. Do you have any interest in joining the bank for a little while? And I kind of have this funny skill set where operated in environments that have a lot of bureaucratic red tape. From teaching to actually a huge piece of our business was supply chain management, which is not exactly the easiest industry to navigate. And so would you be willing to come to the bank and help us think about some of the platform partnerships that we're building? So I get to do a little bit on, I'm not technical, but do some on the product management side, some on the marketing side, and some on the partnerships and like business development side.
Very cool. If we can keep going, sorry, with Holly, with you, jumping around a little bit, but you gave a lot of time of your life. I'll get you to grab my hand, and then
I trade you.
Yeah.
and
I trade so much.
what's in that cup?
There's water.
I'm
as
only
well.
joking.
I know.
Good, you're joking. I think it's in the red
Yours is
cup
better,
on the
I know.
camera. I don't know. Cool. Tell me, when I saw you in the green room, whatever, you seem pretty happy, right? You've had a big exit, yeah. But this is this is a big chunk of your life, right? To get there. And so talk about was it strategic? Were you trying to find? Talk about the process of selling your company and how you lined it up and
Sure.
how it feels to give away so much, part of your life.
So if you are thinking about selling your business, no matter what stage you are, it's actually can be a quite distracting process. I've heard many entrepreneurs at any size, that's the common theme, that it can be very, very distracting. And for us, it's so distracting that we put people on it and we hired these things called bankers to help us out with it. So our process was a bit different. We certainly, I think fundraising and exiting might be two different things. Fundraising is almost like you're getting engaged, I'd say, and then acquisition and exiting is a bit like getting married in some ways, because they're going to take a piece of your business, or it might be merging. There's really only two ways to exit, which is, three ways: merging, acquisition, and then closing down the company is probably the third way. People say IPO is an exit, but it's really for the investors. Just keep that in mind when you're thinking about it. I think IPO is a great liquidation event, but it's not necessarily a full-on exit. The other liquidation event I will talk about is, and liquidation event just means being able to take money on the table, is secondaries, which has become quite popular in the Bay Area. Do you guys have that or know what secondaries are? No. So basically what secondaries are, it was coined, I think, by Dave Goldberg, who is CEO and founder of SurveyMonkey, and Mr. Sandberg. Unfortunately, he passed away. But it allows a company to stay private just a little bit longer. So usually what happens is they'll find investors who want a piece of the company, and some employees, early employees or early investors might want to sell their stake to them. And so that's kind of what a secondary is. It's almost like a mini IPO in some ways. So for some of those people who are able to sell, they're able to get some money out of it. But for us, in terms of I believe that on the M&A ladder, there's several rungs, and the best part is to be strategic. Probably on the lower tier is the acqui-hire. So it's basically you just acquire them for the talent. And usually those companies, either the technology is used or not. Usually, for the most part, it gets just the team. It gets shut down. The next level is to buy it for cash flow reasons, revenue reasons. Actually, a lot of gaming companies fall into that. And then the best ones are the weird ones, like Jet.com, that isn't quite fully formed yet, and then they get bought by Walmart for $3 billion or something. In the B's, I don't know how much. So there's definitely a ladder, and obviously the highest level will be highly strategic, where it's always you think there's going to be a great partnership, unclear. So then the price tag can be very interesting. I'll put that much. But for us, given our size, we certainly involved some bankers to help us kind of organize the process for
What was
us.
the revenue like at the time?
We're about making $400 million a year.
So when they
annually.
offer I don't know if the number's correct in TechCrunch, but if they put $600 million on the table, you're just oh, fuck off. You're upsetting me. This is an insult.
So at this point, I will say this. At this point, so we've raised all the way through Series E. That's 5 rounds. we've raised $245 million. We have a fiduciary responsibility to make good on that money to the investors. So we're heavily diluted as founders. We decided to grow a really big pie and get a very small piece of it. So I think to be able to say fuck off to somebody, I think it's kind of hard. Might be a little different.
I'm Australian, I can get away with some of this stuff.
See what
But
it is. So I do think that for us, particularly the CEO and the board, there is a certain number in our heads of like, okay, this is what we would need to get to for it to make sense, for it to make good on a lot of stuff, because we could have still operated private. We have a lot of great games on deck. We have Avatar, our LA studio is working on Avatar, as also another Marvel game is what they're working on. We also have Transformers in Vancouver. But Netmarble, which is a South Korean gaming company, they ended up buying mainly Vancouver. So Vancouver was the one who made Marvel Contest of Champions. And so it's been very counterintuitive. We've actually sold off our most successful games over time. And it's super counterintuitive, but it's a little bit something that's been in our culture of not when you see success, let's sell it off, but kind of the idea of like, hey, you know, let's be a little bit ahead of things. So we could have sat there and had some split focus. I think that's the biggest thing we worry about, is splitting our focus and running these games and making it very cash flow positive. But it would only be for a certain small group of people. Like, we wanted it to scale. So it would have been better to take those monies and put it into a game that could be a bigger hit, possibly a bigger hit, or a big failure. And we've had a ton of big failures in our company as well. Failed games for sure. So what happened was Netmarble, what they did is they purchased Vancouver and everything that supported Vancouver.
So you're still in the gaming business?
Not quite. So, they purchased that for $800 million. It spun out. So we have other studios, and it spun out into a new company called Aftershock. And Aftershock is currently, there's some buyers and some interest. So it's kind of, it's a little bittersweet, I will say that. As a founder, it's 10 years. It's been personally a bit bittersweet in that, you know, all the pieces are just funny timing. But it's like bittersweet as like a graduation. When we closed the deal, we had a leadership dinner, and I was just looking around the table and I said, wow, this is the last time all of us will be here at this given moment in time, because everybody had different plans, and a lot of conversation around the table was, what are you going to do next? It's just like, what college are you going to go to? What are your summer plans? What are you going to do next? So that's what I mean by a bit bittersweet, is that it's all a little bit kind of, everybody's going their separate ways. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. 10 years has been a really great time. But yes, we're still a gaming company, but Netmarble now owns Kabam and the brand Vancouver. And then Aftershock owns the other pieces, San Francisco and LA mainly. Is that too confusing?
So, it is a little bit.
Sorry, should I draw a map?
No. It sounds like there could be more to sell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Aftershock.
800 mil is just part of it.
Yeah, that was just the first part. We still got more.
Hey, there you go. Brilliant. So, Shruti, you're doing the things, just a recently new role. What is next for you, Holly?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh. Like, I'm trying to learn from Shruti. It's like, so what's going on out there? I've just been poking my head out to see kind of what's been out there. I've been telling people, which I probably should. I'll be like, I've learned a lot over these past 10 years. I should start just writing down a lot of stuff that we've learned. And I'm always big on, hey, if somebody else can learn from our mistakes, why not? Yeah. More power to you.
Great.
Thank you. That's the big reason that you were here, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to take some of these questions.
Oh, there's actually questions.
Yeah. Holly, your tweet, the meaning of life is to find your gift. Your purpose of life is to give it away. How has this, this is a great question.
Wow,
how has this manifested
really
in your
deep.
life?
Thanks,
Yeah, I know.
Anonymous. It's so deep. So my husband teases me because I always like these kind of play on words, but that's not the reason why. I think it's funny because you could just be building a company, and yeah, it's just a gaming company. But I think if you spend most of your life working at something, you should really find some meaning in it. And most of the time when you find meaning in something, it's never that meaningful until you could share it with other people. And I think this quote just really kind of caught me. And it's a little bit of when you were asking me, hey, if anybody, like, what am I going to do next? If anybody can learn from our mistakes, then please. And that's really kind of, I think many entrepreneurs have this inside their purpose, like, what is this purpose? And I feel like this quote really does encapsulate a lot of that and kind of encapsulates kind of what I'm doing today, like trying to give away everything that we've learned, kind of thing.
Very cool. Shruti, what I know that if you're hanging around these entrepreneurs all day, you started coming up with these ideas and thinking about getting back in there. Pretend like we're not on camera.
Okay.
And Silicon Valley Bank's not watching, but is there still this yearning to work on the next thing?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what the next thing is yet, but there are definitely ideas that I had after MoveLoot shut down, and stuff that I'm even learning about now in this totally new environment. I think one of the reasons I love being an entrepreneur is just how much you learn in a short, condensed period of time. And I think being able to apply that to kind of whatever sector you're working in, to learn as much as possible and then figure out like where can you improve a system or a process and what can you create as a result of that. I think that's what's so inspiring to me about it. So yeah, I think for now, kind of the place I'm in is that I just want to learn as much as possible in the place that I am, and we'll see what happens.
Very cool.
So I will add on to that. I think building a company, you do learn a lot, but you learn a lot on, like, if you could think about the letter T, you learn a lot on the STEM part. Like, just, you go deep, and it's part of kind of how you're able to learn so fast. What's interesting is when you said, oh, what are you going to do now? It's like, now I'm popping my head out. It's kind of, you referenced it as well. You're like, oh, things have changed. And this kind of learning becomes more broad. It's kind of like what's out there. How are it, like, now bots are a big thing. AI is a big thing. The world has just changed a bit, and kind of just seeing.
Can we set up some sort of acquisition while you're here?
I don't know what I do with a bot, but
like
maybe I can make it do something.
Or something. Yeah. Let's take some more questions. So maybe jumping the gun, but where do you hope to be in the next 5 years? Well, this kind of goes along with it. But yeah, I mean, you guys both have this surrounded by great technology companies. What's the future as you see it?
The hot thing in Silicon Valley right now is actually AI, and deep learning and machine learning. And right now, those companies are usually small PhD student. It's so funny. They're incredibly smart, but I'm always looking. I always feel like they create this great technology and they look for like customers.
Yeah.
I've met several of them, but most of them are probably going to go for be hired for talent on the acqui-hire realm. I don't know. You're probably seeing a lot more.
Yeah, no, I think AI is really big. I've seen some interesting robotics companies, but yeah, I would just echo what you've said. Bots are gaining traction.
There you go. Can raise money in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Those are probably the biggest, like, pure technology companies.
Very cool. I've read you that you've had great success localizing Kabam's game in China. This is really good. We're quite close to Asia. What steps did you take to achieve this? It's a great question.
Okay, me.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess ours are the games. So actually, this one's been our initial stab at it was not successful, and now we're learning a lot about the market. So our initial stab was to localize it as much as possible. So we took the engine or the kind of guts of the game of Marvel Contest of Champions, and we wanted to take it to China. We thought this was a great IP because Iron Man was a really big deal there. And you gotta understand culturally, they don't have the comic books. They didn't grow up with Marvel. Did you guys grow up with Marvel here? No.
Oh, I do like the movies, but I didn't.
The movies. Spider-Man. Oh, okay. But they just didn't have it because the movies are they have things are incredibly regulated there, particularly foreign movies. So for them, it's just a little bit different. And we went to approach of taking that and localizing it, and that meant localizing the gameplay. In China, they really love VIP systems, and they do phenomenal like systems around retention and monetization. It's just crazy. They'll have an agent that's dedicated to a VIP 24/7 with a direct line for that VIP to call in. It's just so, they really think of games as a service. And so we spent a lot of time trying to localize many things, the characters and everything. And I think in the process, there might have been some of the kind of core of the game that just kind of gotten lost in the process and didn't quite balance the game very well. So our second attempt is actually to not change much of the core and bring it in, and that's actually seemed to be proving to be a bit better.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so it's kind of like Supercell.
Did you try into like China or into any international markets?
No.
So the US is so big, right?
We did,
Yeah,
yeah. We went national in
Yeah.
the United States, but we started in 5 markets. We were limited by physical infrastructure,
Yeah,
which
crazy warehouses, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question: what are some of the most common roadblocks in terms of execution of startup ideas that you have encountered?
That's a good question.
Why'd you go first?
I think, well, I think some of it can be, it depends on what type of business you're in. Some of it can be, like in our case, there are companies that need physical infrastructure, which when you're marrying technology and a physical infrastructure, technology can only do so much. And so if you're reliant in any way on any sort of physical product, whether you're building a hardware company or maybe some sort of e-commerce marketplace, like there's something physical that your business has to do, and it's not totally controlled by technology. I would say the other, honestly, like one of the biggest, I think, challenges that very small companies have is that they spend so much time, they don't have enough, we've talked a little bit about focus, they don't have enough focus, and then people sit around debating, and we did this at MoveLoot, we sat around debating what the right strategy was for like 4 months before we just actually said, okay, well, we don't know what the right strategy is, and we're not going to figure it out by sitting here and debating it. We just need to try something, and if it doesn't work, we need to figure something else out. But I think that can be really challenging for people, which is like you want to have all your ducks in a row, you want to know exactly what's going to happen, and you're just never going to know. So I think that mental roadblock is a big one, particularly when a company is in its infancy, because I think the tendency is I just need to know exactly how this is going to play out, and you're not going to know.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'll add is when you're smaller, I think one of the pieces of execution is getting that traction in marketing and figuring out ways to market on the product market fit.
Yep.
The other thing we haven't discussed is oftentimes co-founder issues become a big problem. And sometimes I think co-founders is incredibly important to have, the right co-founders, but you do come up with problems. We always joke around how most startups die by suicide. They rarely die because of something else. It's usually they end up killing themselves. And then I would say for us in particular, like it says, it depends on your business in terms of execution. So we're very fortunate. We have no inventory. So if we want to turn on more inventory, we just change a number in there, and boom, there's a bunch of swords now for people to buy. So it's really wonderful. That means your gross margins are incredible. But the thing that I find very difficult in our execution is when there's more people, getting people on the same page. I know now I sound like a big company, but I'm like, oh, are we all aiming towards the same goal? And especially for us, because the gaming world has hit a lot of changes. For a while we were hit with the Facebook tax, and we all needed to move on to mobile. In fact, we couldn't even get a mobile game off the ground in the US that our CEO sent our other co-founder to China and said, this is all I want you to focus on. I need you to be away so you can focus on this kind of thing. And that ended up bringing our mobile hit out there. I think partly was the focus. So I think the execution pieces, when you have more people, it's definitely
More cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, there's more cooks in the kitchen, trying to get everybody on the same page and wondering like, oh, what you are understanding, is that really what you're understanding? And then finally, because our business is so, I guess, it has no inventory, so it's very abstract. So we would constantly play with our formula, which is incredibly complex now, is our LTV, our lifetime value of the customer. How do we measure retention? We even had like a cohorted basis. Oh my God, it's so confusing, I couldn't even explain it.
This is a...
Chris, sorry, can I just ask a question sort of around that?
Yeah.
One of the roadblocks I've had in trouble with is I'm me. I'm a one-person, one-man
Sure.
band. How do you get traction with some of the bigger organisations like you're working with Disney and MGM? And how do
Yeah.
you get them to take you seriously? How do they see you as somebody with...
So for us, it was really, we had to prove with our product. If our product had traction, then that's actually when the partners would come to you and you could go to the partners. So for example, our TV shows and sports teams, for particularly the TV shows, we have a big network in the US called ABC, and it's one of the major networks, and they wanted to distribute video on Facebook. And instead of going to Facebook, they actually came to us because they knew we were the largest TV show fans, and they're like, we want to reach you guys. And at the time, Facebook didn't have much of a video solution either, so there really wasn't one place. But it's really going to be dependent on your product traction and getting that first to get to the brands. That's really how you can get there.
We'll take this last question. It's one for both of you. But Women's Day today, you're here for League of Extraordinary Women. Has gender been a problem?
Do you want to take it first?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I had 2 male co-founders and 1 other female co-founder. I can probably say with pretty strong confidence we would not have raised the amount of money we raised had it just been 2 women. I would love to live in a world where there was not gender discrimination or where women in tech were treated like a lot of men in tech are treated, but fortunately that's not the case. I've definitely been in rooms where my ability has been questioned and no one else's is being questioned, or where I've been blatantly ignored. And I think, I'll also be totally honest and say, like, I'm not sure I was even as aware of it until I started working in the tech sector. I worked in a profession that was primarily female. And then when I started my own company, was kind of in for a rude awakening. Yeah. And for me, it's not just gender, it's also race. So you guys might be aware of what's happening in America with regards to kind of complicated discussions about race and skin color. And I think I have also definitely been in situations where people will call out my skin color or make assumptions about my race. And I actually grew up in the southern United States. My mom is a Jewish New Yorker from the Bronx, so she's white. And I have some knowledge of Indian culture, but I'm not, super Indian. But that's not what people see when they see me. So, that created some very interesting situations with investors and sometimes with partners and situations like that.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, and I was also the only person of color on our executive team, and we had a lot of employees who were people of color who worked like in warehouses and drove trucks, but it was an interesting dynamic for me to navigate because I felt like I was often the person in the room calling out the stuff that was uncomfortable, which it's really hard to be that person.
Yeah.
So do you think there's a case where it's this kind of old boys club venture capital that's kind of changing?
yeah.
Is it?
Oh, changing.
Oh, changing.
I'm hoping.
We're like, yeah, there's an old boys
Well, no,
network.
I'm hoping there's a positive thing at the end here.
Yeah.
I want to end on.
I
all
hope
fun.
it's changing. There are also really, I should say all this and say, like, there are some really amazing investors out there, and there's some people who are incredible advocates for women and people of color, and like, sometimes it's about finding those people. And I do think things are like slowly starting to change, but I'm impatient, so I wish they would change faster. That's my take on it.
The guys at Google, they're great. Everything's like diversity, female founders since day one, since before. I think it's kind of more.
But they haven't released their numbers either. And
Well,
their
maybe
numbers
not.
are like
Well, I'm talking about. Sorry, I only have my
like-
experience with Google for entrepreneurs.
Oh,
Mary
that's
Grove,
right.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you read the whole company because I knew there's
Sorry,
a big
yes,
push internally
Yeah.
to like get the numbers up a bit more on diversity. But diversity has
Google
been
for
a big deal.
entrepreneurs.
Big
So
deal.
alpha
Yeah.
friends. Right? Yeah, all right. I'll leave it there. I don't want to get. All right. But yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
what's your experience?
So I will say when I first started, I never thought, I was just like, I'm just working. I'm just a founder, man. I'm just gonna put like my time in, and I'm gonna do what it takes. And it wasn't until we grew bigger and I grew on the executive team that I definitely think, similar to some of Shruti's experience, there definitely has been some bits of tax. Some things that I qualitatively see for the female founder is that if you're not the CEO, it's very easy to be forgotten. Even Jessica Livingston, who is also a founder of YC, talks about that in an interview, and nobody remembers. They all think of Paul Graham in terms of YC, but she has been instrumental in building that. I do tend to see female founders get, I don't know if the word relegated is right, but they're often in HR roles. I found myself in an HR role. I think Shruti
I oversaw
also
HR, yeah.
Yeah, in HR, and I don't know what it is with throwing that to women. I guess there's some sensitive issues like maternity leave. Oh my God, she's gonna have a baby. What do I do, right? Like, I don't know, guys get weeded out by that. I don't know, I'm sorry, that might have been sexist. But like, I do find that. I also find that, you know, I think, me and Shruti were actually talking about this earlier, I do think if we get more women CEOs, just as much as if we get more women investment partners that are driving those decisions, like the diversity just kind of flows from that. I do think having female founders there does do, it definitely changes the numbers better than industry average. Like for us, I'm the only female on our team, on our co-founding team, and that's 25% of the co-founding team is female. And it just so happens that about 25% of our employee base was female, and that's better than the gaming industry average. I know it's not good, but it's better. I do think as you know, women go through life, there's also motherhood that they need to kind of wrestle with, and everybody wrestles that. Just like people judge you by the color of your skin, they also judge you based off of kind of your stage in life. And there's a lot more stronger negative associations around ageism. I think even in Silicon Valley, I think women get hit a little bit harder than men around that. I think they're taxed a bit harder around that. So I certainly see that. Also, we are a minority. I know it doesn't feel that for those who live in San Francisco, but East Asians, my team is all Chinese American actually, and it doesn't feel that way in the Bay Area, but we are a minority. And I even remember early on when we were doing the corporate social networking, we actually made a conscious decision not to put our pictures on the About page. We said, you know what, when 2 or 3 Asians are gathered, somehow we're called the mafia. And I don't know what scares them. Maybe we're gonna surround them and do math problems. I'm not sure. But like, there's just something super scary about that. So we said, you know what, let's stay off. And it's still a majority white male in Silicon Valley for the investors. So I think, sadly, there's a human level of likes, and anything that's different may seem a little strange.
Are you thinking about going and investing? I want to end like on something great.
I have done some angel investing in terms of some interesting ideas, or usually they're friends and relationships. I've maybe thought about it on that level.
What are you looking for? We'll get something fun to do tonight.
Well, I love the idea of like helping entrepreneurs. I do think that investing might be a very it's not an easy thing, and it's actually a little hard to scale because I can't keep up. Like the more I add, then they want more time, and your time is very finite. So it is a little bit harder. I think it's better if you're in a partnership versus yourself.
But games, or what gets you excited?
No, not games. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, are there game developers out there? I have good advice for that, but games right now is hitting just a rough patch. I wouldn't raise capital for it. If you could bootstrap it, that would be the best. Because right now there's just not a platform that's growing. If there is a platform that's growing, that's kind of one of the best things to start looking at and investing on the content for that platform. I know a lot of people are very interested in VR, but I just don't think the traction's there yet. So that's actually general. Is what I'd say about general information. I will say also, in the mobile world right now, it's extremely hard to get consumers. So if you're like a mobile app that's trying to acquire consumers, it's just incredibly cost prohibitive. Like, I know I'm in games and we spend a crap ton of money on there. So then you're fighting for that audience. Therefore, I think B2B might be still very fascinating, very interesting. Unfortunately, I have no experience in that.
I want everyone back on their feet, and we're going to say a big thank you to Shruti and Holly for coming.